All right, guys, so in this video, I wanted to discuss what ended up happening with the whole 9/11 rebuild. Would it have been better to rebuild the Twin Towers? There was a proposal. There's actually a few different proposals that maybe I'll do another video on them separately, but the main one titled Twin Towers 2, which was backed by none other than Donald Trump, in an attempt to rebuild the Twin Towers in the same place and make them 5 floors higher. Of course, that ended up not happening. There was so much rubble and such a mess. It took just, multiple years to even clear that out. And then we did end up getting all the different designs. And then they ended up going with One World Trade Center. Look, there's a few different ways to approach the World Trade Center rebuild. Do you rebuild the Twin Towers? Personally, I would have liked to have seen the Twin Towers get rebuilt, not with the Trump design. The Trump design looks like the exact same thing. What I would have done is I would have made it all glass, maybe almost like a chrome silver, put them in the exact same place, make them square, not like the One World Trade Center, which is kind of weirdly shaped. I think with the One World Trade Center, they were really going for just a complete different vibe, a complete different theme, because maybe, there is the argument if you rebuild them, people have PTSD. It's like reminds them of a horrible, horrible event, obviously. But I do think the correct mentality, or what I would have done, is I would have just rebuilt them using chrome, using glass, and made it 5 floors higher to where you could reflect the glass with a color changing type thing. The glass on the exterior would actually change to American colors and show like the American flag and things like that. I just think when you look at the New York skyline, from the water, seeing One World Trade Center, it doesn't have the same glow as the Twin Towers did. And with kind of the way skyscraper technology is at this point, there's a real big emphasis on glass. It's kind of what's in right now. I'm sure what's going to be in a few years is shrubs on the side, or maybe like a tree growing out the window or something with the amount of green they want. Here's an interesting perspective on why they didn't rebuild it. I think all of this can be kind of worked around. It says because soon after the attacks, the footprint of the towers, the ground on which the towers stood, were declared ground zero and holy ground by politicians and those in power at Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the owner of the land underneath the towers. Thus, the areas were memorialized so no buildings could ever be built on them. But I'm sure that could have been changed, if you want to rebuild them like the Trump proposal, like several of the other proposals that came out after, 9/11 when they started planning the rebuild. I'm sure you could circumvent that. Also, the cost of building 2 new towers that could withstand a similar attack. See, that's the thing. Everyone thinks that you would get another 9/11 event, but with the height of the security that's around Manhattan now after 9/11, with all the new and improvements, obviously there's a lot of bad that comes with it, a lot of rights being taken away because of 9/11, but it would be very hard, almost impossible. Anytime a commercial airplane, got within sight of Manhattan, it would have been shot down. So also, the cost of building 2 new towers that would likely have exceeded the negotiated insurance payout for the loss of the original. Yeah, but still, you would, they built One World Trade Center, cost $4 billion. Finally, market demand was never sufficient to fully occupy the original towers, which were plagued by high vacancy rates since they were originally constructed. Thus, there was no market demand for the millions of additional square feet of space that would be contained in the second tower. Yeah, but they would completely build the towers differently. See, the original towers were built in the 60s. They would have had to have had huge renovations. Let's say 9/11 never happens, they would need huge renovations. So the buildings would get built different. It wouldn't just be all office space. If they were rebuilding the exact same buildings, they wouldn't rebuild the exact same interior. You would have hotel space. You would have different aspects of it. I do think it is a slippery slope with the idea of just rebuilding them. That's why I wouldn't have them the exact same, as like Twin Towers Part 2. I would change them to a modern look, but it does symbolize America. Rebuild them and make them taller. If you knock our buildings down, we're just going to rebuild it. And it's going to be taller and it's going to be better technology. Why? Because we can, because we're the biggest economy in the world. And that's what I would have done. But I do understand what they ended up going with, the One World Trade Center, Two World Trade Center. There's some renderings for that. Look at that. That's a recent rendering that came out in 2022. It's a little step building. I mean, that's just, what is this, Dubai? Does that really work in New York City? I don't know. This is a pretty crazy alternate history on the World Trade Center if the planes did not collapse the buildings, and I'm not going to get into that. That's a different topic for another day on the debate of that. But the two main buildings of the complex, the North and South Tower, as of June 2021, 19 years after the attacks, both structures are reinforced by a system of metal frames. 9/11 Memorial Center is located on the former Ground Plaza, and both the towers are permanently closed to the public. The new One World Trade Center can be seen in the backdrop of the buildings. So I guess in this alternate history, both of the towers survive, but they're just being reinforced to be held up, and the buildings, I guess, are not salvageable in terms of them being rebuilt. That's an interesting idea. That's a good photo, too. That's a nice rendering of it by someone. As for the plan that Trump supported, it had an initial emergence in 2004, with early development happening from 2005 to 2007, and then just kind of petered off. The latest update says, this was in 2010, it says since 2008, news of the project as well as if it could still be built had not been mentioned due to the completion of 1, 3, and 4 World Trade Centers as well as the Memorial and Museum. Yeah, it's not going to be happening. In the notes, it says Donald Trump was the main sponsor of the project, thus it was nicknamed Trump Twin Towers by the media. Yeah, Trump was a real big hit with the media. Man, what happened? I'm not going to get into what happened with the U.S. media and in mainstream. It's just, oh my goodness. I think the emergence of Twitter and all that, it's completely changed the way we view Democrats, Republicans. I don't want to go off on a tangent or anything, but getting back to the 9/11, I think what they should have done is rebuilt. I understand the idea. Listen, it's a very delicate topic. It was sacred ground, but you still would be able to do it if you signed off on it. Rebuild both of the towers. The idea that they wouldn't be used is kind of dumb because the towers would be built completely differently. It wouldn't be all, office space. But I do think there is kind of a less of a need for skyscrapers now with all the remote work we've seen ever since the pandemic. We'll have to see what ends up happening with Two World Trade Center, which is currently a planned skyscraper as part of the World Trade Center complex in Manhattan. And right now, the status of that project, according to Wikipedia, is on hold. The latest rendering right there of the new buildings with One World Trade Center. So we'll have to see if that ends up happening. It's been on hold for a while. One World Trade Center, the newer one, the construction started, I believe, in 2006 and was opened. It finished in 2013, opened in 2014, I want to say, the new One World Trade Center. And my opinion on that, again, I just don't like that type of design, but I understand it's like the futuristic look. It really seemed like they were trying to go for something that was completely separate from like the Twin Towers legacy. As for the Twin Towers, there were a lot of people that before 9/11 said that they were kind of an eyesore. People didn't like them. Obviously the tragedy happens. People changed their tune. I thought they looked great together. One of them by themselves, I agree, would have been ugly. It just looks really old and really like out of date. But both of them together, I thought it looked good and it worked on the skyline. That's why I would have loved to have seen them rebuilt, and you could use an illuminant glass that would have lit them up in the colors of the United States, and we get true patriotism in this country. But patriotism is at an all-time low. You've got people, very ashamed to be Americans. It's so sad. A lot of this is mainstream stuff, and people just do not know how to formulate their own thoughts, so they're left clinging to the idea that, oh, because I'm an American, I'm a bad person and our country sucks, even though we're the number one superpower in the world by far. But no, yeah, you know what, guys? We stole native land. We're horrible people. It is exactly what everyone's done since the beginning of time. You conquer places. That's how it works. But no, we're horrible people. Yeah, I have American guilt. It's terrible. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.